Hey everybody, and welcome back to Bigfoot Cooking, where today, we making some calzones. That's right, we're getting fancy flip-flop pizza. What's the difference between a calzone and a pizza? I don't know, you could just fold a pizza over, but no, calzones are sealed, and you put red sauce on the outside, not the inside. Makes for a whole different flavor profile and a different bite. You're gonna watch and see. Now, to do this, we're gonna start out by making, of course, the crust, because the dough for this, there's two ways to do it. You can do it on the fast, where you just make it and let it sit on the counter, or if you want to build up more of a rich flavor, a yeasty flavor to the dough, you make the dough the day before, put it in the fridge overnight, and the next day, you get a little bit more out of that yeast that you want, right? So let's get started with the mixing. Now, to do the dough, which I've already done once before in a pizza video, but same dough, different results. We're gonna start out, we've got 2.5 cups of flour. Bread flour works great, all-purpose flour works great. It's a calzone. It's not that picky when you really get down to it. So 2.5 cups of flour, a packet of yeast. We've got 1.5 teaspoons of sugar, 3/4 teaspoon salt, a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic and basil for that little extra flavor, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and 3/4 cups of water. So that's all the ingredients. Let's get started on waking up the yeast. They gotta be alive to get to the party, you know? Now, to wake up the yeast is not complicated. Literally, we take our water, we're gonna take our, I don't know if it's dehydrated, freeze-dried, I'm not sure how they make this magic happen. But you take your yeast, you're gonna add it to the water, you're gonna stir it in just a little bit, and then, because yeast are hungry when they first get up, it's kind of like when you first get out of bed, you're a little hungry, right? We're gonna add sugar. Now, as we got this water ready, the water that you want to use is not cold water, not hot water, because that doesn't really get the yeast going right. You want it pretty much about body temperature, somewhere between 80, 90 degrees. I'm sure there's a magic number that you want it exactly to be, but the biggest thing is to get the water where it doesn't kill the yeast, but instead wakes it up, makes it start to work, makes the bubbles happen, makes the flavor happen, all that good stuff. So we're gonna stir this up a little bit. We're gonna set it off to the side. And in about 5 or 10 minutes, you should start to see it bubble and boil. That's the yeast doing its stuff, and that's what you're waiting on. While that's sitting there, let's go ahead and mix our dry. Now for the flour part, nothing crazy here, just a little salt. You don't wanna mix the salt with the yeast, because you can actually kill the yeast if you pour it in there. That's why you add it to the flour. And our garlic, because, I mean, come on, it's Italian bread. You gotta have garlic. And of course, you got to have some basil. Oh yeah. And what you do, you mix all this in. Again, you think with dry ingredients, what difference does it make? Yeah, wait till you get a hold of something that's just got a giant pluck of salt in it. Ooh, it'll change your taste forever. We'll get this mixed, and we're just gonna sit here and wait on the yeast to do its yeasty stuff. Might take a minute though. Again, about 10 of them. And voila, our yeast has become quite yeasty. If you take a peek, you can see it's very frothy on the top. Yep, that means we're alive and kicking. So let's go ahead. We got our dough hook on our mixer. What we're gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and dump in all the flour all at once. No need to save it for later. No need to take it on a date. It's just ready to be mixed up. From there, we're gonna add our frothy, odd as it sounds delicious, yeast. It actually smells really good. It's got that fresh baked bread scent to it. Oh yeah. And our little bit of olive oil, because hey, flavor is what matters here. And we're just gonna set this guy, slide him in here, got the dough hook on it. We're gonna let it go probably for about 10 minutes. We'll see where it winds up at, but we're waiting on this to become just a basic dough ball. And once it starts rolling around and not touching, sticking to the sides, just blap, 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 blap. Oh yeah, it's time to make the dough. And there we have it. A few minutes of mixing, and we have us a lovely little dough ball here. Not too sticky, as you can see, doesn't stick to the hands, stick to the counter. What we're gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and kind of tuck this under a little bit, work these strands just a touch, get us a nice dough ball here. And again, this is really only gonna make 2, maybe 3 calzones. We're not trying to feed a whole family here. We're just trying to make us some good old dinner, right? You wanna feed more folks? Make a bigger recipe. You can double these stuff, it's okay, it don't mind. We're gonna let this rest, but before we do, I'm gonna take the bowl here and put just a little bit of olive oil in it, so that way it doesn't stick to it as it's sitting here and rising. Doesn't let the dough dry out, any of that good stuff. We'll just take our little bit of olive oil, spin this around and coat it generally. Now I've taken that olive oil and I've kind of moved the bowl around, that way it coats it nicely. Yes, you can do it with your hands too, but you know, I'm trying not to get dirty here. And we're just gonna plop it in, spin it over, spin it back, that way there's a light coating of oil on it. Take our lid, set it on here, and we'll check back with it in about 24 hours. Because again, we're gonna let this thing slow rise in the fridge. But if you don't wanna wait that long, about 2 hours on the counter in a warm room, that'll get you about as well. Just won't have that deep yeasty flavor, you know? But how hungry are you? We'll see you back here in a minute. All right, time for day 2 of making our calzones, because I want that dough to be, ooh, so good. Let's work on the sauce, because the sauce has actually got to cook down a little bit to make it just right. So here's the ingredients for the sauce. We're gonna start out with about a half an onion. Unless you really love onion, then you could go a whole onion, but we're gonna do half of an onion, 3 cloves of garlic, tablespoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of sugar, about a half tablespoon, golly, teaspoon. All right, it's time for day 2 of the calzone, because I want that stuff to be, ooh, so good. So let's get the ingredients for the sauce happening, because the sauce has got to cook a little bit too. So we're gonna start out with about a half an onion, unless you really want to use the whole thing just so you don't waste it. That's up to you, but you get a strong onion flavor then. But about half an onion, 3 cloves of garlic, a teaspoon of salt, 2 teaspoons of sugar, because that sugar will help cut some of the acidity for the tomatoes later, about half a teaspoon of basil, oregano, and a good heavy pinch of chili flakes, just to give it a little bit of heat, and a big old can of San Marzano. Marzano, is it? Marzano. Man, what's wrong with me? San Marzano tomatoes. Woo. That's the stuff to make the sauce out of. So let's get to the cooking on that. We're gonna take out our food processor for this one, because I don't feel like crying, and you gotta chop the fool out of these onions to make them pretty much disappear in this sauce. So we're gonna run them through the food processor. Now, of course, we're gonna start out with just half in our onion here. And the nice thing about the food processor, you just cut off the top, cut off the bottom, and make it big enough to fit in this here hole right here. So we're gonna go ahead and make it about thirds. Now with the Ninja, it actually has a settings for disc. So we're gonna, since we're using the disc to go ahead and chop these onions, obviously we're gonna push the button, right? Hey, so let's push the button, get this thing started. We're gonna go ahead and drop in our 3 onion pieces, just 1, 2, 3. And while we're at it, we're gonna go ahead and put the garlic in as well. That way it all gets nice and mixed up and we can fry it up at the same time. And there you have it. So nicely sliced, diced, and chopped like fool. Every little thing we want to make this cool. Now, let's get the tomato going. And now, the tomatoes. We're gonna use a throwback from way back. That's right. Y'all ever seen a can opener? I know some folks hadn't, some folks have. We're having a class on this. You're gonna take your ye old can. This is old school. You could open it from the bottom if you wanted. Grab it right here. We're right where this blade goes right over the edge. Yeah, I know I'm teaching you how to open a can, but believe it or not, one of y'all out there may not know how to do this. We're gonna squeeze it right down, get that little pop, and twist. And that's it. Magic. The can is coming around. Now what I do is right about here where it's up. Yes, you can cut your fingers, so don't be stupid. Little right there, and when it comes loose, bam, there you go. Can is open. Now we're gonna take our tomatoes here. We're gonna pour them in and try not to get sauce everywhere, but you know that ain't gonna happen. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna puree these tomatoes. We're gonna use what's called an immersion blender. You don't have to do it that way. I could put it in the food processor and grind it up too, but I got a Christmas present and I've been looking for an excuse to break it in. So So let's see how this thing works. Now, the nice thing about this guy, this is the business end down here. This is what's gonna do all your grinding and what have you. And as you notice, it's actually kind of quiet. So hence the point of immersion. We're going to immerse it into this thing and try to keep it down. This also has a nice plastic sheath on it that keeps you from scratching up. Say you were doing ceramic pots or something like that. This will keep that from messing up. So we're just gonna cram it in and stir it around. Now, I'm also trying to keep this under the liquid so that way I don't make a lot of air bubbles, because if you make too many air bubbles in this thing, it's actually gonna turn it into like an orange color from the air itself. It changes it. So we've got these pretty well crushed up till we have a nice soupy consistency. And for cleanup, this thing comes right apart. Makes life simple. So let's add some more flavor to it and put it on the pot. Okay, so I got a little ahead of myself with the immersion blender, but I really wanted to play with my new toy. We actually have to take the onions and the garlic and go ahead and brown those. So for that, we're gonna apply a little heat. We're gonna take a little bit of olive oil, just enough to coat the bottom of the pan, because we don't want no sticky, right? I mean, if you burn everything to it, what's the point? We'll give this just a few minutes to heat up, and then we'll dump in our lovely aromatics. Oil's hot. Let's add the scent. One nice, the nice thing about grinding it up this way, it's one big flop. Woo, hot, hot. Now, the nice thing about the onion being cut down so fine is that honestly, it's gonna disappear into the sauce. You're gonna have to hunt to find it. So if you got those really picky kids that can, oh, I found an onion. Yeah, they won't find it in this. All right, that's cooked down nicely. Now, let's add the tomatoes that I got a little too happy about earlier. Give them something to work with here. Whee! Oh, making a happy pool. Stir these guys in, and look at there. Already, you can't hardly find the tomatoes and garlic, but oh, you can taste and smell them. And of course, while we're going, let's go ahead and add our spices to it. Well, spices and flavors. We got our salt, and that disappears quick. A little bit of sugar to help with the tomato bite. A little bit of basil in there. A little bit of oregano in there. Just a little bit of red chili flakes, just to wake it up a little bit. Not so much that you're like, oh, what is that? But enough to add some flavor. Now from here, we're gonna get this bring it up till it boils just a little bit. I've heard some people say wait until it starts flopping. You get that kind of deal going on. And once it does that, turn it down on low and let it simmer here for a while just to thicken up. Because it's kind of you're making a marinara sauce / the dip for the calzones. And we want it to stick to the calzone, not just run back off of it. So let's see how this goes. All right, now that we got that boil going on, what we're gonna do, we're gonna go ahead and reduce the heat down to low. We're gonna let it simmer for 15, 20 minutes and then check it again to make sure it's thick enough for us. Because really that's all we're looking for, is to thicken the sauce again, to make it stick, to make it, make the calzone something you're gonna ride home to mama about. So we've pulled our dough out of the fridge. We've given it about an hour to come up to room temperature so it's not a cold dough. We got our marinara on the stove doing that slow bubble cook thing. That way it kind of condenses and helps some flavors get good. Let's do my favorite part of making bread. Let's degas, where you take that nice swollen dough and just poof, 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 and watch it go down. I don't know why that's so amazing. Maybe it's kid stuff, but we now have an all-night amazing dough that is ready to go. So let's go ahead and flour up a surface here and pull it out. And now a little flour on the hands, of course. Don't want any stickies. And let's do a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit of kneading to this, just to go ahead and work them gluten strands just a little bit. All right, we have our dough ball. Let's go ahead. We're gonna make 2 out of this mix. They're gonna be pretty good size, but you figure if you're having a calzone, you might as well have a calzone, right? So we're gonna take this half and we're gonna ball it up. We're gonna set it off to the side. We're gonna put it under a damp blanket so that way it doesn't dry out while we're playing nice with this one, shall we? And now for the rollout. This is where it's you against the gluten. You got to get it just right. You got to get it rolled out. And every time you roll it out, like you see, it tries to pull back. You just got to keep stretching that gluten and working it. Takes a few minutes, and you may poke a hole in it the first time you try to do it, and that's okay. I mean, this is homemade. If it's not perfect, no one's going to know but you, right? And the more you do it, the more you practice, the better you get. Now that we're rolled out nicely, let's go ahead and start adding some toppings because, I mean, after all, it's a calzone. It's like a hideaway pizza. And what do you need on every pizza? Cheese. So to begin this, we're going to do some ricotta. We're just going to plop a good healthy handfuls on here. Well, spoonfuls. I don't know about handfuls. We'll situate this in here oh so nicely. Follow it up with a little Italian sausage. Now, don't forget, this is just how I'm making mine. If you wanted to make one just straight out of cheese or I don't know, buffalo wings if you wanted to, hey, make it yours. I'm just showing you a path. You make this recipe however you like it. I mean, I'm even using deli sliced meat right here. A little bit of ham on top of it. Nothing too fancy, just, simple flavor. It all works together. Can't forget the pepperonis. I mean, how else would you make a meat lovers without pepperoni? The carnivore especial, I guess. And to top it off, a healthy dose of mozzarella. Now we're going to come in here with a little bit of egg wash around the back of it. That way, when we pull the top over it, it should glue together. That way you keep all the ingredients on the inside. I mean, that is kind of the point, right? You're not making a mess, you're making dinner. We're just gonna hide what we got in here. We're gonna trim off a little bit of this extra on the outside. Who knows? We might be able to take and make us a third one with some of this. And then you're just gonna take your ends and roll them over. And there we have calzone number 1. Let me set this on the baking sheet and get the calzone number 2. It figures the one I did second that I didn't really record much of, it turned out great. What the heck? Thus is the life of a cooking show, right? So let's get this guy lifted carefully because she is full of goodness. Set it on my baking sheet right here, right next to its other little brother. Oh, a little bit of egg wash on top of it. And let's set her into a 550-degree oven for about 10 minutes. Woo, this thing is gonna swell up nice. But unless you want that big bubble on top, make sure you take your knife and go ahead and put you a few little holes in here. Otherwise, what's gonna happen, all that pressure in there is gonna create an air pocket, and your calzone is gonna sit about this high with about that many ingredients on the bottom. Not what we're after. We are wanting something a little different. So we got our vent holes in here. Let's prep it for the oven. Almost forgot. Don't forget a little egg wash on it too. It'll give you a nice brown crust as well. This is all coming together so nicely. All right, 10 minutes in the oven, and what do we have? Ooh wee! Look at that! Oh man! Now, you know it's blazing hot because I just pulled it out of 550 degrees. I'm gonna give it about 10 minutes to not scald my tongue, and then we're gonna cut into it. Just hold on, I'll be right back. Now, while we're waiting on the calzones, I wanted to point out something. I depend on you guys for two things. I depend on you for Bigfoot footage. I don't have any. This week, no one has submitted a Bigfoot photo, a Bigfoot video, nothing. Where is he? Where is Bigfoot? He has gone missing. He's MIA. Did the aliens take him? Did he run off to Washington, D.C.? What? We're missing Bigfoot. Guys, this is huge. This has never happened on the show before. I need a Bigfoot, and he's nowhere. You know, maybe it's because he's lonely. Maybe he misses you guys clicking that subscribe button. You know, the one down there where you can just put a D on the end of it. It changes it from subscribe to subscribed to. Maybe that's what's going on. I don't know. I've tried to find him. I've put out APBs. I've done everything. I even asked my chickens. They didn't know either. So come on, guys. I need your help to keep this channel going. I need Bigfoot. Help me out. Thanks. Now let's see how the calzones look. And there we have it. Calzones de yum yum yum. Now take a look at this. See how the cover here is just kind of plain and dull, and these have a nice glossy shine to it. That's the difference between egg wash and no egg wash. Yeah, that little piece I cut off at first, I made another one out of it. I figured why not? Why not? You know, you don't want to waste food. But I mean, let's take a look at this thing. Let's see what we got inside. We break this thing open. You got the ooey, the gooey, the cheese. Oh, baby. We got a cliffhanger there. But I mean, I tell you what, a little bit of this, a little bit into the dipping sauce. Yeah, I dipped it in the whole thing. Watch me make it disappear now. Man, you're gonna need a bib eating this thing. That cheese is melting out of it. Maybe if I wasn't in such a hurry to eat such a good meal and let it actually cool down, that might help, but oh no, not something this good. Something this good only tells you two things. One, you're alive and living and eating good. And two, even though we hadn't seen him, we know Bigfoot's real. Come on, get with it. I'm gonna get with this. I'll see y'all in a bit.